I want to talk about the echo, the echo that stops here. I had this dream, and in the dream, I can remember just standing there and just saying, echo, echo, echo. At the time, I didn't understand it. I didn't understand what it meant, but I started journaling and reading, and I realized that the dream wasn't about a sound. It was actually about pain. Pain that doesn't stop with one person. Pain that travels throughout generations. And some trauma doesn't disappear. It echoes. It echoes into that next generation. Now, when the language found me, I realized that there was an issue. And I started, as I was healing and on this healing journey, I started reading this book, and I want to grab it. Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome by Dr. Joy DeGruy. I believe her name is DeGruy. And then I started reading also It Didn't Start With You, and by Mark Woolen. And the third book was The Body Keeps the Score. And that was by Bessel van der Kolk. So if I'm saying it wrong, please forgive me. But Dr. Joy, her work didn't teach me something new on the post-traumatic slave syndrome. It gave language to what I had been living through, and what had been going on for generations in my family. And again, with reading, It Didn't Start With You and The Body Keeps the Score, all three of those really helped me, and it pointed to the same truth, that trauma doesn't only live in the memories, but it lives in the family and it lives in the body. The body feels that. Now, although it didn't happen to you, the body is repeating it. And what struck me was realizing that so many of the behaviors that I grew up with, they weren't personality flaws. They were just survival responses. I want to talk a little bit about my grandmother, my paternal grandmother. She would say, never tell a child or a girl that she's pretty. I was like, who says that? My mother didn't say that to me at all. It was just my paternal grandmother. And so I lived with that because I was trying to understand, why would you never say that? Because that, now it's about affirming. You are affirming your daughter, or you're telling your son that he's handsome. You're affirming them. You're making them feel comfortable in their own skin. You're letting them know to be confident in who they are. But for my grandmother, who was raised by former slaves, that weren't her, she wasn't raised by her mother. She was sent to live with my great-grandmother's husband's parents. And that's a whole totally different story. But she had been raised by them. And in slavery, enslaved women, they, and post-slave mothers, I should say as well, that visibility for daughters was a risk. It was a risk of being taken. It's a risk of being abused, or a risk of being sold. So silence became their protection, to make sure that, they kept their daughters protected. They did any and everything to ensure that their daughters were protected. So she wasn't withholding love. She was just practicing the survival instincts that she was taught. I didn't understand that. When she said it, she never explained it. So I didn't understand it until recently. It also caused me to understand my dad, because of course he was raised by her, and he was raised in the South, of course, and as a black male, he could be blamed and for anything, and so hypervigilance wasn't optional. It was a requirement to survive. Don't make anyone angry. Don't say anything wrong, and don't be seen too much. Even though he left the South as a teenager, and they moved up north, the memories came with him. So the body remembers the geography. It remembers the Jim Crow South. And those memories, of course, went with him up north. And so you can't erase, the body couldn't erase the memory of the South. And a lot of things, that he carried with him. And I can't blame him for the things he felt and what he taught me growing up. But I didn't have to be so hyper vigilant. There was no need, because I grew up in the 70s, so there was no reason for me to feel that way. And I didn't understand why we had to feel a certain way, or why he said certain things. And of course, he grew up in the 30s, so my idea of how he thought was just like, why are we thinking that way? Why would you? But I understand it now. And some things you don't understand until you get older, why your parents feel the way they feel, and some things that weren't explained. But let's pivot over into another time. And this is all during my healing time, where I was dreaming about these secret rooms. And the secret rooms I would go into, and I was so ill at ease. I mean, I was in the room in the dream, and I would be praying in these rooms and praying strong, and getting that spirit out of there. I was just praying so hard, but it wouldn't leave. And I'm like, why? Because I am, I believe in prayer, and I couldn't understand, well, what's going on in this room, in the dream, that I can't get rid of it. And eventually I realized that I was the room. I was the room. It was me. And those rooms were parts of me that I inherited, the survival mode, if you will. The survival of the places and the voices that were hidden, and boundaries that were unclear, and control that replaced safety. I built these survival rooms. There were all these rooms. I mean, these rooms were, and I remember, they weren't like rooms that were horrible. They were just like houses that we were going to go by. And in these rooms, we would get to another part of the house. Like, I did not I would just fight in those rooms, and I didn't care for it. They had regular bedrooms, but this particular side, it was always, I would feel ill at ease. And it wasn't like they were messed up. They were, beds, and they were beautiful and everything. But that was me. It was me. And I couldn't get rid of what I couldn't confront. And through journaling, I saw me. And so now I have to become that cycle breaker. I didn't experience what my ancestors experienced, but I did inherit their echoes. And understanding this doesn't excuse any kind of harm, but it frees me from and us from carrying it forward unconsciously. It's like those rooms. They were I unconsciously carried all of that because I didn't understand there was a room. There was a part of me that I was carrying, and I didn't need to carry it anymore. And I didn't want to carry it and give it to my kids either. So my responsibility now, it's different. My responsibility is to make sure my children and future generations are comfortable in their own skin. I can affirm their beauty, which I've always, my children are grown now. So, I've always affirmed their beauty. I always told them that they were beautiful. But I tell them that they're beautiful without fear. And to create safety without silence. That you don't have to be silent. And that's a big thing for me because I grew up so silent. And I was taught to be silent, and that they no longer have to be silent. Or that I don't have to be silent, I should say. Because my children, I taught them that you speak up, say what you feel. Because I was brought up to be silent, but I didn't know that still parts of me was silent. And I had to relearn who I am right now. And that was a big part of me, that, parts of me didn't speak up. And I was always known as, oh, Leslie's going to say what she says, and Leslie's blah, blah, blah. But there were still parts of me that I did not. I did not speak up, especially with those who were close to me. And some things you just don't see. And so now I'm changing. I'm still changing. And you'll see that in a lot of the videos that I post, and about me changing and about me healing. Because healing isn't about blaming the past. It really isn't. It's about understanding it. And I truly understand it now, more than ever. But understanding it and choosing it differently, that's a big deal. It's not about dishonoring my ancestors, because I will not dishonor them. This is about finishing what they couldn't. And I'm grateful for that, because I get to finish what my ancestors could not do. I was meant to finish it. And this is where the echo stops with me. I'm not echoing pain anymore. I'm echoing freedom. Echo. I'm echoing freedom. I speak peace. I'm echoing peace. I'm echoing what God wants for the future generations. I want to echo being comfortable in yourself, in your own skin. That painful echo, it's going to stop. It stops with me. Be blessed.